In the fall of 2012, Scott Coates says it was business as usual as a police detective with the St. Joseph Police Department. That is, he says, until he received a call from a man he'd become acquainted with through past investigations.
This particular day that he was calling me, I think he ended up calling me close to 10 times, asking me to do various things. That basically at the end of those phone calls, I felt that I was being set up.
Coates says the calls immediately struck him as odd, especially when the man began asking him for favors that began with a request to run a license plate and ended with a discussion of money.
When you have an interaction with somebody and you know that they have never given you any money or there's never been any discussion of money before, I've been on the other end of that conversation, and so I knew at the end of that conversation that there was something that was going on.
Eager to help clear his name, Coates says he approached federal investigators, but they weren't interested in what he had to offer.
My phone records, I offered my phone with the text messages that I actually still had from almost 2 years previous. Anything that would be relevant, my bank records, anything that would be relevant to an investigation like that, that I would be willing to cooperate with them in any way.
And that's where the story begins to get even more complicated. While all this was going on, Scott Coates and his partner were the lead investigators in a case against a group of individuals charged with the robbery and murder of a St. Joseph man named Brian Ulmer in August of 2011. One of those individuals, Camario Goodwin, charged in the murder case, was also working as an ATF informant. And that, according to Buchanan County Prosecutor Dwight Scroggins, posed a problem.
Federal authorities were unwilling to share any information regarding his activity, which was the first time in 25 years that I'd ever had that be a problem. We've always had a very cooperative relationship with federal authorities, and all of a sudden, when it came to Mr. Goodwin, federal authorities were unwilling to share anything.
Scroggins says just prior to a pretrial hearing for Camario Goodwin, Special Assistant U.S. Attorney Jalila Otto hand-delivered a letter to him stating that Scott Coates was the target of a federal investigation, and that letter would, to say the least, throw a wrench in the case against Goodwin.
The primary significance of that was that Detective Coates was one of two lead detectives in the case. His testimony at that trial was going to be critical to our chances of success, so him being the target of an investigation himself then raises all kinds of potential credibility issues.
The judge in the case ruled that fact would not be allowed in court during the case against Camario Goodwin. However, a jury did end up acquitting Goodwin, and Scroggins believes a lack of cooperation from the federal government in the county case against the ATF informant may have been why.
We were prosecuting cases that involved the murder of a local citizen, and that, in somebody's opinion, was less important than some drug cases. That, and I'm not suggesting that drug cases aren't important or significant. They are, and I know that a lot of work goes into drug cases, but I mean, generally speaking, in my experience, everyone rallies together to cooperate on prosecuting homicide cases, and that just wasn't the case in this instance.
Scott Coates says he won't speculate on the federal government's motive, neither in the investigation into him nor in the decision to deliver that letter to Scroggins prior to Goodwin's trial. In the end, that investigation never turned up any corruption on his part. Instead, it would be that gun Coates admittedly mishandled back in 2007 that moved to the center of the Fed's investigation. While Coates says he did fail to book the gun into evidence in a timely manner, remember, he took control of the gun in 2007 but failed to book it in until 2009. The gun's owner, Corey Barr, received the gun back in 2010, something the federal government says shouldn't have happened, and something they say Scott Coates was responsible for. But that, Coates says, simply isn't true.
once I've booked it into the lab, it's out of my hands. It's now the lab that has that, our evidence lab. It went through whatever it went through, it comes back, and it's in the custody of the evidence room. I don't know what happens to it once it's there. I didn't know it was back.
In fact, department records obtained by Fox 26 and the St. Joseph News-Press show that on the day the gun was released to Barr, Scott Coates was on vacation, the firearm ultimately being released to Barr by an evidence technician. That said, a grand jury issued an indictment against Coates. He was charged with aiding and abetting possession of a firearm by a prohibited person. The evidence technician who physically released the gun to Corey Barr was given immunity by federal prosecutors for testifying against Coates. As part of a plea agreement, Coates pleaded guilty to failing to notify a supervisor at the time of the interview that Corey Barr was not permitted to possess a firearm. Then, Coates resigned from the department.
You have the belief that everybody does the job the same way that you do, that their interest is to find the truth. But I believed that the truth would come out and things would be resolved. I still believe in the criminal justice system. I think we have the best criminal justice system in the world. I still believe that. But I mean, let's be honest. If an investigator and a prosecutor have a motive to specifically want to file charges on somebody, if their motives aren't completely pure and they aren't searching for the truth, it's unfortunate, but I believe that it can certainly be done.
Scott Coates filed for retirement last May. Alex Flippin, Fox 26, KNPN.